anything is formal, including the DOT, it will be forwarded so that when the public hearing comes up, everybody knows. The meeting was open to the public. There were a couple of residents there. I attended, Dave stopped, Claudia stopped. So the town board does know what is basically going on, and any changes will be reported. Code enforcement officer, everybody is there, so it was open, and there was a lot of good information by the White Waters Group.
Thank you. I believe you have something for our very pregnant zoning board chair.
Well, I have a note here that she may not be here because of going to maternity board. They said keep it short, but the monthly meeting will be held on Wednesday, March 18th at 6 p.m., followed by the continuation of 3 public hearings. Monthly meeting on February 12th. The public hearings include the request for the variance made by Harold and Sandra Walsh of Raleigh Road and Peter Gadelli of County Road 57. We will also finish our formal interpretation of the zoning ordinance as related to the Trail of Terrors on Clifford Road. The ZBA held 2 additional public hearings during the month of March, scheduled for Wednesday, March 25th, and 7 p.m. The first one is for a request for a 7-foot area variance by Mr. Willard, looks like Raleigh of Maple Ave. The second request is by the planning board for a formal interpretation of the zoning ordinances related to commercial parking lots. And the ZBA met with zoning attorney Scott Chaffee recently for further training on area variances and formal interpretation of the zoning ordinance. Gene Conley, chairman. Byron and I will get copies made.
Okay.
You will have them.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. I want to make a statement that I've only been in office 3 months, but I am very, very impressed by the work and caliber of people we have on the planning board and the zoning board. Very impressed, and I commend them for all their good work. They do a lot of it, a lot of it. Building Inspector Dan.
During the month of February, we issued 1 trailer permit for $103, 1 chimney permit for $20, 1 alteration for $20, and 1 addition for $176. Total permits for the month of February was 4, total for the year 9. That puts us 1 below last year at the end of February. Total fees taken in for the month of February, $754. Or, I'm sorry, $319 for a yearly total of $754. That's $500 above last year at this time. Mainly because we raised the building permits last year. When we raised the permit fees, we didn't raise them until June, so that's why it looks like we're coming out so far ahead of last year as far as the fees go. Under inspections, 8 new construction, 12 zoning, 5 fire safety, and 10 site inspections for a total of 35 for the month and 69 for the year. Also on April 4th, here at the Town Hall at 10 a.m., my office is going to put on a small seminar on the building permit procedure process. It's going to be a step-by-step deal that takes you from your initial application, what you have to have for a complete application. It'll take you up and through the construction process, which type of inspections you're supposed to have for during the course of your construction, up until your point of your certificate for occupancy. I think it'll be very valuable to anybody that's contemplating any building in the town this year. The process has gotten a lot more complex now than it used to be. You could walk in off the street and hand your money over and get a permit and that was it. You can't do that anymore. There's a lot of state requirements and in regards to blueprints and so forth. People need to prepare a little bit farther ahead for this permit process, so it's hoped that this seminar will point this out to them. It's going to be basically more or less informal. We'll cover the topics, answer any questions at any point in time that anybody has. Hopefully, people will take advantage of it. Thank you.
Hey, Dan. I don't see Diane here, does it?
I guess just a very brief.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
First of all, I'd like to thank Bob Kerfee for keeping the dog kennel open and clean so we can get in to feed and take care of the dogs that are in there, because it's been a very tricky 3 or 4 days, and he's done a marvelous job doing that. Also, we have quite a few dogs in the kennel. Some we've had over 2 weeks. The problem is Jack Woods, who does the euthanization for us, hasn't been able to take them. He'll be able to take them at the end of next week, and those dogs that are past the limit will be taken there and euthanized. That's basically it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jim. Under, Highway Department is next. Byron, did you get a report from Bob or not?
For the month of February, 16 days plowing, 7 days cutting trees, 2 days erecting signs, and 4 days patching holes. Wages for February 92, $26,298.95. Maintenance, repairs, and supplies, $15,422.84 for a total of $41,721.79. Wait till you hear the one for March.
I would like the minutes to show the excellent job that the highway superintendent and crew is doing. The crew is shorthanded, but I think they're doing an outstanding job, and I'd like the minutes to show that. Under other, Jim, do you have a...
Yes. I met in February with the Recreation Committee for a meeting. At that time, we discussed numerous different goals, objectives, visions, whatever you wish to say. And at that time, my emphasis was on a summer rec program. After talking with the committee, I modified my position greatly, and I think that we will have an expanded recreation program in the township that will encompass, hopefully, both of the feelings and beliefs of both groups. Now, Randy and his committee have been meeting. That's Randy Bennett, president of the Recreation Committee. And he has been meeting with his group, and he and I had a phone conversation on Wednesday. And what we basically agreed to is the following format. I believe that I have to have a director, a person who is paid for by the town and who is in charge of that particular program. Now, until such time as we advertise for a director and have a director on board, Randy and I are going to be working out the fine points of the rec program. Randy and I basically, it's my understanding over the phone that we agreed that I will work with the committee when we come up with the job description for the recreation director, and that I feel that we are quite close in what we believe we can do. Now, we will, I believe, advertise a particular salary. Randy's feelings are that a lot of that money that we have budgeted, we do have $1,200 budgeted for a salary for a director, should go into program, and my intent is to advertise a floating salary, and if someone wishes to assume the responsibilities at a reduced salary, but accept those responsibilities, then that certainly would be amenable to me. Randy wanted to get the program going, and I totally agreed with him. And some of the small ticket items, I told him there's no problem, he can go ahead with. For example, he wanted to do a swimming activity at the YMCA. That's no problem. We can upfront the money there. The money's available. That's $40. Items which required only busing, certainly I had no problem with those. One point of concern that we did have was the issue of a teen dance. I have a concern regarding chaperoning and insurance coverage and so forth. I've talked with Claudia, she's our representative, the insurance person on the board now, and she's going to check all of the concerns that I have. Randy wasn't planning on doing this until later in the year, so if it's not until July or August, it'll give us plenty of time to check on all of the concerns that I have. Right at the present moment, my own personal feeling is I have some apprehension there, but I'll be honest with you, but I'm not going to say that my mind can't be changed. Also, Randy said that there is a tour that they want to take with Onondaga Lake Tours where the boat on Onondaga Lake would be chartered, and they have to reserve that ahead. I told Randy, go ahead and do that. We have the money for the tickets. There was no problem there. I've also talked with them because one of the concerns that I had was that a lot of the field trips were sedentary. And my concern is and was that it be a more participatory program. And we have developed somewhat of a participatory program, and this is where we've had the meeting of the minds. The field trips certainly are on within the confines of our budget. Participatory activities, however, certain things such as, Randy talked to me about a woodworking activity, a birdhouse type building situation, some crafts. He talked about wildflowers, that some people were going to do some activities in that area, some things with paper mache. Kite flying was another activity that they mentioned. Easter egg painting and or hunt. All of these things we have adequate funds and facilities to facilitate, so there's no problem there. A major issue, or a major item that I felt and see happening is what we call JOAD. Now, JOAD is the Junior Olympic Archery Development Program, for those who weren't familiar, because I didn't know what JOAD was. And Colleen Scott contacted me, and Colleen is here, and if any of you have questions afterwards, you certainly can ask them of her. But basically, this type of program could be an ongoing program where we could have the younger people in the community starting to become interested in archery. There is a program whereby there's a starter situation where the materials and kits and necessary equipment can be given by the Junior Olympic Committee. And Colleen did, I think, get some information, and I think she'd be willing to share it during the public comment section, maybe if you would, Colleen. And I asked her to contact Randy because I want to continue working with the committee. I feel that Randy has a good committee, and I'm very, very happy with volunteers. And the volunteers seem to be a dedicated, committed group. And it seems to me, though, that we can certainly work together and expand and have a very positive recreation program. So that's where we are right at the present moment. The field trips are on. Randy's going to be scheduling them. And within the next couple of months, we'll have a director on board, and then that person can be making the report. Or at least I hope we'll have a director on board. And that's basically it.
All right. Under new business, do we want to have a resolution to advertise for this position at a salary of $1,200?
The only thing was, and the reason I didn't bring that forward now, was I wanted to meet with Randy and I wanted to meet with that committee or have him funnel it back to me so that we could have a job description so we would know in the paper exactly what we were advertising for. It would be so vague if we simply said an athletic director or something that it might not be fair. So I'd rather wait till next month to do that. It doesn't matter, whichever you want to do.
Well, I think, Jim, just to get things going, we should advertise for recreation director at a salary of $1,200, and then work out the job description, because I'd rather not put this off another month. I'd like to get it going right away.
Up to $1,200. Up to $1,200. As long as we have the floating salary in there, that would be acceptable.
So then it becomes up to the whatever he wants to do.
Up to the group, and we'll work out
Right.
Yeah, job description to be given later. Yeah, okay, that's fine with me.
Okay.
You need a motion? Or?
No, that'd be done under new business.
Okay, good.
While we're on the subject, could I ask a question? Randy himself did apply for this position for this year, and he was at our interview, and we interviewed him. He's worked with the program for the last 2 years, and I'm just wondering why he's not being considered for that position himself.
I was under the impression, and he certainly is being considered, I would think, but the concern that I have is that the letter came in after the time that they were accepted. I don't know who interviewed, but I certainly did not interview him.
Well, the town board last year did.
Well, this is the new town board, so this town
Well,
board...
you were invited to that meeting, you didn't attend.
I have never seen the letter. If he has a letter in,
I believe you got one, didn't you, Byron?
No, I did not.
Well, we got a copy of it, I don't know who.
I don't know if I have it, but it never was filed in my office.
Well, he showed up for the interview, and we did interview him, and he's an excellent candidate. He's worked with the program for 2 years, and he even offered to do this for $1 if need be, just so the money could be diverted to the program itself. So I think you should seriously consider him for that position.
One paper advertised that was at the last meeting too, that you were at.
I understand it. I'm just saying that the advertisement was not, the application was not received within the time frame that we've established. I'm certainly not excluding Randy. I'm certainly opening it up for anyone in the area that wishes to apply for that position. It was not appointed, therefore, that letter very possibly will accept Randy. In fact, my intent well, I don't know yet. I can't comment yet.
if we can have that letter of application, if that's what is on hand. I feel that under new business, unless anybody here has any objection or out there, we can make that appointment. Would that be acceptable? Do you have any reservations?
Yes, and the reservation that I have is the letter was not received during the... May I say that this is my turn and this is not open to public comment at this point? My concern is that letters are to be in by a certain time. Letters of application were to be submitted. That letter, to the best of my recollection, was not received, and I would prefer to wait. I don't have a problem with appointing Randy. It's just a formality, and I want to live within the confines of the law.
In defense of that, Jim, the reason he didn't apply on time was because everyone was under the impression that Randy Cooper was going to reapply, and we didn't know till the day of that he wasn't, and certainly no one wanted to compete with him for that position. So when he found out that he hadn't applied, then he put his application in because he didn't want it to be left blank. So that's the only reason it was late. Otherwise, he would have had it in way ahead of time. So it's a formality, but I think it's something we should overlook in this case.
If everyone else is in agreement that we can waive that, I would go with it. I don't have a problem. But I want to make sure, just want to record that if we do it this time, the next time a letter comes in and it's late, then we say, well, we did it in any case.
Let's move on.
Mr. Supervisor, before we get into other business,
Yes.
I'd like to ask that, so that it doesn't conflict with our schedule, that all the town board be notified when we're rescheduling or scheduling the meeting. I mean, I got home from work and found out that it was Saturday morning. I don't know if any or all of any part of the town board was asked about when they were available for the meeting or not, but it would be nice to know that, so that you have other obligations, you might not be at the meeting.
Well, Jess, I tell you, I was here in this building at noontime and made the decision when that snow was really blowing around here, and there was absolutely no way we could have a meeting on Thursday night. So I made that decision, and when you cancel a meeting, you also should reschedule it. And I rescheduled it and called your home immediately and Howard's home immediately and left word that it was rescheduled for Saturday morning. That was the only thing I could do.
So, actually, the meeting was rescheduled basically on your decision,
Correct.
and then you notified all the town board.
Right. Because when you call in.
I know that.
Yeah, yeah.
You should have the new meeting rescheduled. But if I'd had other obligations, I wouldn't have been here today. This is,
I would say, Justin, in defense of that, I did have another obligation. I had to cancel it and change it. I was not informed of had it either, but
I think you well may have, but I think, just as a rule in the future, I would suggest maybe polling us to see if we can attend, because you could have been sitting here alone today and not even known it.
But it's very tough to call radio stations and television stations and tell them you're canceling one, and you should be able to tell them when you're rescheduling.
yeah, I feel the supervisor has to have that authority.
No, I agree, I'm just saying in the future, if we can do it,
If I can,
I'll call
I
us
certainly
off
will.
and ask and make sure we can all be available for it.
This was a decision that had to be made very quickly.
now, the only other thing is, we have a new computer system coming for the assessors availability.
Right.
This did not need a vote of the town board that we're spending this kind of money.
It was mandated that we have such a computer in order to do data collection. We did receive bids and got the appropriate,
Well, I haven't even seen
Computer.
a copy of the bids, but the only thing I keep hearing that we're mandated on is having an inventory, and I've never had nothing on buying a computer, but we put it in the budget, we wanted the computer. But it's just that I didn't see a copy of any bids, and it would be nice, ahead of time, that the bids were accepted, who was accepted.
any other old business.
I have a few items, Mr. Supervisor. First of all, I'd like to ask Byron, has local law number 3 been resubmitted as local law number 2?
Told Mr. Chatfield when he called me that it was wrong. I have heard nothing from him.
Is it his obligation to correct that?
He filed the original, yes.
So he's aware that it has to be changed to 2, and
He
has
is the
to
one that notified me that it had to be changed.
Okay.
I researched it and called him back and told him that it had to be number 2, and assumed that he took care of it.
Could you check on him and make sure that it has been taken care of this month, so that this does get done?
I'm pretty sure it has. I met with Scott yesterday on another matter, and that was one of the things that he had discussed and was taken care of.
Okay. Okay, also I wanted to ask, Mr. Supervisor, last month you mentioned the fact that we were notified back in September of last year that we received a $29,680 revenue check from the state. I'd like to ask when you were made aware of that check coming in. Did you know that last year, or did you just find out this year? Or?
I learned it when it was in the newspapers about a month ago.
A month ago? So it was in the newspaper before we knew about it here?
That is correct. And I didn't feel it was right, and I let Fran Sullivan know that, too.
Did we ever receive a letter from the state confirming what was in the newspaper?
Yes.
Okay, that should have been in our boxes. I think we all should have known about that as soon as you received it. I didn't hear about it until
That
the
was
meeting.
subsequent to the newspapers.
Okay, but you mentioned that it came September of last year. Could you clarify what you meant by that? I mean, if it came September last year, but you just found out about this month, I'm not quite sure I can make sense of that.
Well, I asked our town bookkeeper at what point we received that, and that's the date she gave us.
So the bookkeeper received it last year in September, but you didn't really know of it yourself until this year.
That's correct.
Well, something's a little funny here, because the town board should have been made aware of it last year.
I would have thought so.
Well, it was, we were preparing a budget and we knew nothing about it.
And this is the
I
same,
don't
It's
care.
not your fault, it's not your fault.
this is the same bookkeeper you just increased the salary on, too. I think that there's ought to be an explanation for this. I'm going to find out why we didn't know about it, since zero got penciled in last year when we had a check for $29,680 in September. The other thing I want to mention, too, is you approved the payment of a bill for Duncan McCaffer of $4,275 to defend the judges in a case 2 years ago. And I'm wondering why we paid $4,275 when last year Don Kitts, I believe he even stated at a meeting that Duncan McCaffer had agreed to lower the cost to around $3,500 because he felt it was a little out of line. Why did we pay the bill to the tune of $4,275 when we had negotiated less before that.
You're asking me? If Don Kitts negotiated it, I can't answer for Don Kitts.
Well, it should be in the minutes of our meeting because it was mentioned in a meeting, and I'm surprised that Byron didn't bring it to your attention that it was mentioned because he usually clarifies everything with us when we do make a mistake.
That particular bill was discussed in front of everybody here, and if that were the case, you should have mentioned it at that time. When that bill was approved and was discussed here, you should have mentioned that it should have been negotiated.
I agree, it was an oversight on my part for not mentioning. I was concerned at the time with not paying it at all, which I voted against, but it still shouldn't have been paid for that amount of money. Also, in the letter that he sent us when he received his check, he says, "I'm sorry that the payment of my fee caused such consternation with the former town board as I tried to get free counsel for the defendants and the board at that time would not retain any. I just want to state for the record that the town board was never offered this from Mr. McCaffer. And if it was offered to anyone, it would have been our judges who never let us know about that, because I'm not aware of it. I don't believe you are either, Jess. So just for the record, I want people to know that we did not know any free counsel was being offered. And now we just paid a $4,275 bill. So I wanted to make that clear. Also, you mentioned when the salaries were reinstated, you mentioned that the monies were found to pay for these things, the unauthorized attorney's fee, as well as selectively reinstating certain salaries totaling over $12,000. I asked at the January meeting where those monies came from, and I wanted to know. I haven't heard anything yet, and I'm requesting now publicly that I'd like a full documented report of where this money is coming from, because I don't know where it's coming from. It wasn't in the budget last year, and I'd like to know if we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, or what we're doing here as far as where these monies are coming from. So if you could, before the next town board meeting, if you could give me a copy of this and document it in writing where this money came from, and I would appreciate that.
Certainly.
That's all I have on the whole business.
Any other old business? I will now entertain public comment on resolutions, and please make it resolutions only. The first resolution to be voted upon is resolution number 86, procurement policy. It's one of those resolutions that I have to read. Yes.
I just have a question on Resolution 9290 regarding the assessment. Can you tell us how many bids were submitted and what they were? Are you going to make that public?
I don't mind answering that, but we'll discuss that
You want to get to that resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
under discussion. The resolution number 9286, procurement policy. I'll read this very fast. Whereas Section 104B of the General Municipal Law requires every town to adopt internal policies and procedures governing all procurement of goods and services not subject to the bidding requirements of GML Section 103 or any other law, and whereas comments have been solicited from those officers of the town involved with procurement, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Volney does hereby adopt the following procurement policies and procedures. Guideline 1, every prospective purchase of goods or services shall be evaluated to determine the applicability of GML Section 103. Every town officer, board, department head, or other personnel with the requisite purchasing authority hereinafter purchaser shall estimate the cumulative amount of the items of supply or equipment needed in a given fiscal year. That estimate shall include the canvass of other town departments and past history to determine the likely yearly value of the commodity to be acquired. The information gathered and conclusions reached shall be documented and kept with the file or other documentation supporting the purchase activity. Guideline 2, all purchase of A, supplies or equipment which will exceed $10,000 in the fiscal year or public works contracts over $20,000 shall be formally bid pursuant to GML Section 103. Guideline 3, all estimated purchases of less than $10,000 but greater than $3,000 require a written request for a proposal, RFP, and written facts quotes from 3 vendors. Less than $3,000 but greater than $1,000 require an oral request for the goods and oral/fax quotes from 2 vendors. Less than $1,000 but greater than $250 are left to the discretion of the purchaser. All estimated public works contracts of less than $20,000 but greater than $10,000 require a written RFP and fax/proposals from 3 contractors. Less than $10,000 but greater than $3,000 require a written RFP and fax/proposals from 2 contractors. Less than $3,000 but greater than $500 are left to the discretion of the purchaser. All written RFP shall describe the desired goods quantity and particulars of delivery. The purchaser shall compile a list of all vendors from whom written/fax/oral quotes have been requested and the written/fax/oral quotes offered. All information gathered and complying with the procedures of this guideline shall be preserved and filed with the documentation supporting the subsequent purchase or public works contract. Guideline 4, the lowest responsible proposal or quote shall be awarded the purchase or public works contract unless purchaser prepares a written justification providing reasons why it is in the best interest of the town and its taxpayers to make an award to other than the low bidder. If a bidder is not deemed responsible, facts supporting that judgment shall also be documented and filed with the record supporting the procurement. Guideline 5, a good faith effort shall be made to obtain the required number of proposals or quotations. If the purchaser is unable to obtain the required number of proposals or quotations, the purchaser shall document the attempt made at obtaining the proposals. In no event shall the inability to obtain the proposals or quotes be a bar to the procurement. Guideline 6, except when directed by the town board, no solicitation of written proposals or quotations shall be required on the following circumstances. A, acquisition of professional services. B, emergency. C, sole source situations. D, goods purchased from agencies for the blind or severely handicapped. E, goods purchased from correctional facilities. F, goods purchased from another governmental agency. G, goods purchased at auction. H, goods purchased for less than $250. I, public works contracts for less than $500. Guideline 7, this policy shall be reviewed annually by the town board at its organizational meeting or as soon thereafter as is reasonably practical. A motion to accept this resolution?
I so move.
Second?
I'll second it for discussion. I applaud this effort. I think it's a good idea. I'm a little concerned about the dollar amounts that we've got in here. Where did we get this document from?
This is a state-mandated procurement policy.
Is this a model that they wanted to go by?
This was furnished to us by Dennis Hawthorne Jr., who has furnished the same policy to other boards in the area.
It's a state law.
Yes.
Yes, but your guidelines can be stricter than state.
Right.
And I disagree heavily with the amount of dollars we're talking here. I mean, you were giving people up to $20,000 that they can, without bid and just approval. And we lowered this for a reason so we could keep control of what was going on. And now we're talking about raising it, so basically we don't have control of what's going on.
I have to agree with Jesse. I think that, we're being pretty liberal with the money here. I think we probably should have discussed this a little bit before we brought this before the board to approve. I don't know why we didn't do that. I think we should have sat down together and discussed these options as far as the figures go. And with that, I'd suggest we table this for our next meeting, maybe sit down and talk about these figures a little bit.
This procurement policy should have been done basically at the organizational meeting or as soon as possible in January. I have no problem with tabling it, but I don't think it would serve any useful purpose.
Well, if we approve it as is, it's, like I say, it's a pretty liberal use of the money here, and I'm just concerned about that. I think we should tighten it up a little bit myself. If you want to discuss it now, I'm willing to do that. If you're satisfied with it yourselves.
I'm satisfied with it. I think there are enough safeguards in there to protect the town.
Can you tell us what the limit is now?
Pardon?
What is the limit now?
I really don't know.
We said eliminate anything that you're going to buy over $3,000 had to be bid. We come in, the state audit come in and hollered about a project that went, the cost of, as far as they were concerned, we were told there was 2 projects, but as far as they were concerned, it was 1 project and it come over $11,000 and it was not bid. And they wrote us up 2 years ago or 3 years ago on an audit. And we lowered, at that time, I think the state was like $5,000 or $7,000 buying without bidding, and we lowered it to $3,000 so that we could keep control of what was going on.
May I see the
Jess, I have a question of you. Isn't that what this says?
No.
Well, tell me what the problem is. If it says it's less than 20 but greater than 10, it requires a written RFP and fax proposals from 3 contractors. Isn't that a bid?
No, you can get 3 contractors and write up proposals without even having a bid. It's like saying we can have a private little meeting, get 3 contractors, write up proposals, and one of these are going to get the bid, as long as the town board agrees to it.
That's the safeguard. If you get three proposals and the town board votes on it, I think that's the safeguard. Nothing can be done by a single person.
Yeah, I see that as a major safeguard here. I think this tightens it up, Jess.
I don't think so. Like I said, you can set up a project, and if you keep it under $20,000, you get 3 contractors to say, yeah, I'll do it for this, you get it in writing, the town board agrees with it, then it's not bid, you only got 3 contractors involved. In other words, we could get into like fixing projects, if we want to get out and open about it.
A copy of this Tuesday would have been nice. I know you mentioned you were going to be having this policy, but a copy of it would have been nice for us to look over the last 2 days, and maybe we would have been more prepared to make a decision right now, too.
I believe this is in the January town topics that we all got a copy of, basically. It's right in the magazine. It's one of the major articles. I don't have it with me, but I believe it's there.
I think there are sufficient safeguards written into this that would preclude any underhanded buying, Jess.
Well, I was happy with the one we got, anything over $3,000 has to be bid. But that's just my opinion.
It's a valid opinion. Any other discussion? Byron, would you poll the board?
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
Again, I think it's a good motion here, but I'm not satisfied with the figure, so I'm going to vote no.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
I feel the same, that the figures ought to be changed, so I'll vote no.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. The next resolution is number 87. Move that bids for services, equipment, and/or other advertised procurement be received and publicly opened at 4 p.m. on the Tuesday afternoon preceding the regular town board meeting, unless the advertisement specifically states otherwise. The bids will be made available for review and discussion at the Tuesday evening work session unless the advertisement specifically states otherwise. This motion supersedes the motion passed on June 13, 1991, requiring that bids be opened at the regular town board meeting. Do I have it moved?
I so move.
I'll second again for discussion.
Thank you.
I believe I was the one that made the motion in the past to be opened at the town board meeting. And the reason I did that is because I had someone come to me and tell me, well, gee, you open them up at 4 o'clock when I'm working, I can't be there to see how it's done. How do I know that someone's not rigging the bids? Well, I'm not accusing anybody of ever doing that or having the potential of doing that, but that is a possibility. And that was the reason we made the motion before, because no one does know. If only one contractor's here and one town board member or one town clerk or whatever, and if it's a local contractor, who's to say where he couldn't open all the bids and then change his bid? We don't know that because the public's not there to witness it. And that's why we made the motion to open them up at the town board meeting where the public's here to witness it, and we know that everything's done on top of the table. Once again, I'm not saying or accusing anybody of ever having done that, but this was to avoid that situation, which I'm sure has happened in other towns, other places. So that's why we have the policy the way it was before.
The concern that I would have, though, Howard, is that the way that it's done now, if you open the bid at the town board meeting, then you have to go through, do all of your discussion, do all of your thinking immediately. If it's something that you need to have, a piece of highway equipment, something like that, you could actually postpone for a month, because most of those things, in some cases, you'd have to have time to think through and to make a decision about. My concern is that I don't have time. I have to be given something and act immediately on that. If it's opened here, I don't have the ability, I have the ability to make that decision if it's done on the Tuesday before, and the Tuesday meeting is public, and it's at 4 o'clock, it is open to the public, people can be here. If there are 2 or 3 contractors bidding, I would assume that if I really wanted that bid, and I felt there might be a chance of collusion or coercion in some manner, I certainly would be there, and I think your contractors would. And I think this gives us more of an opportunity to make a reasonable assessment of the bids as they are received.
That hasn't been the case in the past, so we haven't had all the contractors show up, or any townspeople for that matter, and that's what I'm concerned about. Also, that's why we have the ability to table things, and we can always have special meetings to approve them 2 days later if we want to, so I don't see that being a real problem. I think that the biggest problem is the fact that the people should be witness to it, and they can't be here at 4 o'clock, most of them, they work, the contractors work, they have to take off work to be here and so on. I think it'd be more convenient for everyone concerned to do it the way we used to do it.
Well, now, why don't we strike a compromise and change the 4 PM to 7 PM on Tuesday night, where the whole town board is there, and we open them. And the public is invited to them, it's open.
That sounds reasonable to me.
The bids are to the town clerk, addressed to him. It would be necessary for the town clerk to be present at the 7 PM meeting
To record the bids.
to record the bids. I will change that motion if
I would do the 7 o'clock, would that?
to 7 o'clock.
Is that what you would change to?
Yes.
I would accept that with no problem.
Ready? Howard?
Thank you, that sounds really good.
And then we need a motion to amend. And I would move to amend resolution number 9287, second line, to read, and publicly open at 7 PM on the Tuesday afternoon preceding, and the verbiage to continue as written.
Actually, you strike out quite a bit there, but the wording, the amendment to it will, in sense, state that it will be opened at 7 PM.
I wouldn't strike out anything. All I did is change,
Well,
it changes it to 7. It would be exactly the same verbiage, I would think.
no, excuse me,
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. You're right.
one second here.
Are you still going to accept these at 4 o'clock and then open them at 7?
You've got it. Okay, that's a way to word it. Okay, good point, Byron. Move that bids for services, equipment, and/or other advertised procurement be received by 4 PM. Strike out publicly open. At 4 PM on the Tuesday afternoon preceding the regular town board meeting, unless the advertisement specifically states otherwise. The bids will be publicly open and made available for review. Got it? The bids will be...
I was trying to find it, I haven't found it. Start to the beginning of it, let's start.
Okay. Move that bids for services, equipment, and/or other advertised procurement be received by 4 PM on the Tuesday afternoon preceding the regular that's not the
That's correct. It's correct so far, Dave.
on the Tuesday afternoon preceding the regular town board meeting unless the advertisement specifically states otherwise. The bids will be publicly opened and made available for review and discussion at the Tuesday evening work session. Okay? And so on. Okay?
Now, you have to take actually 2 votes. You vote on the
Okay.
amendment, and then you vote on
The,
the motion as amended.
The first vote will be on the amendment. Byron, will you poll the board?
Council Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
Aye.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye.
Now you're on the motion.
Now on the motion as amended. Byron, will you poll the town board?
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
Aye.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. Resolution number 88. Move that the town clerk be authorized to advertise for bids to have a new roof installed on the Volney Municipal Center. Specifications for same may be picked up in the town clerk's office during regular business hours. All bids must be received in the town clerk's office by 4 p.m. on April 7, 1992, at which time they will be publicly opened. The town board reserves the right to accept any or all bids.
Move to accept, and then I'll have to move to amend. I'll move to accept, and I've got to move to amend, because your times are wrong. Well, the problem, okay, I move for discussion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Now, I move to amend because of the situation of the preceding motion supersedes with the language in this one. Pardon?
I said this would be fun.
Yeah. The previous motion supersedes the data here, because they will not, at which time it will be publicly open. That has to be struck. They'll be opened at 7 p.m. at the board meeting. Or received by 4 p.m. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Strike out at which time they will be open, at which time they will be publicly open, and it will read, they will be, let's see, bids will be, I'm going to read from above, the bids will be publicly open and available for review and discussion at the Tuesday evening work session. All right?
7 p.m.
Thank you.
Can I ask if the specifications have been drawn up yet? And who's going to be doing
They
that?
are the same specifications as last
Last
year.
year's?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. First, we'll vote on the amendment. Byron, will you poll the board?
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
Aye.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. Resolution number 89. Move that the highway superintendent be authorized to purchase on state bid one John Deere front-end loader for a net total amount with trade-in and including extras of $74,860. Do I have a sec? I'll move that, and do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Under discussion, there is money in the budget for this.
Do we have a copy of, that he handed us Tuesday night of this machine? The other thing is, getting back to, I know that 5 or 6 years ago, we purchased a new front-end loader, a CAT, and because this other one was getting old, and my question was then, why do we need two? And he said because the other one was wearing out. Now that, I guess, is wore out, and he is still saying we need two, and my question is, why do we need two front-end loaders? We're talking about spending $74,860 because the money's there for machinery. Why don't we use this money to pay off other machinery? I don't, with the roads we have, they're all built, why do we need two front-end loaders? I still don't see it, but
The concern that Bob voiced to me was that with the salt shed and with the necessity for loading with this machine down, we're now limited, we have one loader available to us. If something happens to the other one, we have to rent equipment, which is not cost effective. It costs us, it would cost a great deal more. They've been using the two, and this was what Bob emphasized to me. I wish he was here to further speak for himself, but he did tell me that.
Well, any piece of equipment you put in a salt shed in a period of, I would give it 8 years. That's not going to be serviceable because it's in a salt shed, but I still, it's a lot of money.
The other thing, last month when we were signing bills, Bob mentioned that he was concerned about being able to meet his payroll, and I'm sure he wasn't anticipating this weather in March, so I hope he doesn't run short there to sacrifice for this. I think maybe with that in mind, it'd be a good idea to hold off on this until we know what our expenses are for other things.
It is in the budget.
But that money can be moved to other,
Not out of machinery.
Can't you move out of equipment to payroll? No, because payroll's general.
It cannot be moved to machinery, but it can be used to pay off machinery instead of bonding with some more.
So sorry, our superintendent of highways isn't here to answer that. Any other discussion?
I just would have no problem doing this. I really firmly believe we need this piece of equipment, and Bob convinced me that we needed it because of the situation. I totally agree with Jess that a piece of equipment working in a salt shed, doing what this is doing, it wears out more quickly. We wear out the cat, we wear out equipment, but that's one of the things that happens when you're taking care of highways. Equipment wears out.
the conveyor was supposed to alleviate that problem last year. So it said, the conveyor that we bought from last year was supposed to extend the life of this. Well, he thought he had some more mileage left in this last year, now I guess we don't.
He keeps repair records on every piece of equipment out there, and I don't remember the figures by heart, but the figures that he has on what it's been costing to maintain this was the reason why he is making this request.
Can you give me any of these resolutions?
Any other comment from the board? Byron, will you poll the board?
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
No.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
No,
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. Next resolution, number 90, move to accept the proposal dated February 28, 1992, from Assessment Services Company, Cortland, New York, to provide data collection and revaluation services for the town of Volney for the amount of $99,750, and that a formal contract be entered into. It is understood that the project schedule calls for project commencement on April 1, 1992, with completion by July 1, 1993. Somebody move that?
Okay, I asked previously before you started to answer a question on this. Can you remember?
Under discussion.
I so move.
Second. Thank you.
Discussion on that, please.
Who moved it, right? Who moved?
Brody, how do you move that second?
First of all, the last couple of months, you've claimed that if we didn't complete it by June 1st of 1982, we're going to be fined so much per day per parcel, and now we're getting someone else to do it. They don't have to have it done until 1993 of July 1st?
The state will take what we are doing into account.
I said that before, and I said we could still meet the 1992 deadline, and that they would take that into account. So I don't understand the difference here.
They are willing to, well, not actually have said this, but they will not take any action if we begin as per this schedule.
By paying someone to do it, you mean? Yes. So if we did it ourselves, they wouldn't give us that privilege, but by hiring someone to do it, they're extending the time.
We could not do it in sufficient time, impossible.
Well, not by 1992, but 93 we might be able to.
Well, not our 3 part-time assessors could not in any way, shape, or form do a complete revaluation in that period of time.
Okay, the revaluation, is that costing about $20-some a parcel to do, on top of the $20-some for the data? Because it figures out to about $40 a parcel, the figures that we were discussing in the amount we're bidding or bonding for. Is the reval part of that around $20, do you know? How much?
They do it for a total price.
Okay, roughly around $40 a parcel. Okay, because when we got bids a year ago, it was only around $20 a parcel just to do the data collection, not the reval. And I'd be surprised if the reval is worth $20 more, but that's the going price. The other thing I'm concerned about, what is the prevailing interest rate we're going to be paying on this bond over a 5-year period? Do you have those figures?
I do not.
Do you know what the interest rate itself is?
I have no idea.
And we're going to vote on this without even knowing that?
I would say yes.
Okay, go ahead. Although I would like to know what Marie was going to ask for during public comment.
Okay, I asked you earlier before you started the resolutions, if I could comment, you said I have to wait. My question is, you said you have bids here, I'd like to know how many bids that you received for this, and who they're from, because the bids were not read publicly.
Okay. There were 11, we were given 11 different companies that could do this data collection. We sent out requests for bids to all 11. 6 refused, turned down our request. We received 5. The range of bids was from $99,750 from Assessment Services Company to a high of $143,750 by Coal Layer Trumbull Company. This Assessment Services Company was the lowest. The next one was $117,586. There was one for $107,865, $118,000 from another. So this was, of the 5, the lowest bid. And they had good credentials.
And can you tell me what other town they done? Do you have any?
They did Fulton.
They did Fulton?
Yes. And Janet LaSalle is very pleased with this outfit that is going to do our collection.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Byron, would you poll the board?
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
Absolutely not.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
No?
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. The last resolution is resolution number 91. Whereas preliminary testing of the soil for possible contamination on the site leased by the town of Volney from the Volney Volunteer Fire Corporation for use as a park/playground has proved inconclusive. And whereas certain individuals wish to continue testing to conclusively prove the integrity of the land for park use, and whereas should the results of further testing reveal sufficient contamination to require reporting to the DEC, therefore resolved the town of Volney shall contract and pay for additional environmental testing to determine the suitability of the leased site for a park/playground. Further, all costs for any required remedial action as determined by the DEC shall be the responsibility of the owner of the site, the Volney Volunteer Fire Corporation. I hear it moved.
So moved. I'll second for discussion. First of all, Section 3D of the lease agreement with the Volney Fire Corporation clearly states that the property is accepted as is and that all costs of developing and maintaining be the responsibility of the leasee, which is us. Now, I interpret developing to mean whatever needs to be done to that property to put it in order for a park. I do not believe this is the responsibility of the fire corporation. They were very generous to us in giving us that property, and I'm sure they can't afford this type of process. And if we're going to continue with this, I say we continue with it at our expense. If you choose not to do that, I can only assume the political will here is the only way, our only thing in the way of getting this park completed.
The responsibility for any remedial cleanup would be the responsibility of the landowner.
Not according to our contract, Mr. Supervisor.
Well, I would...
It's up to us to decide. We can make that interpretation, but I believe it should be our responsibility.
That would be nice to assume what could potentially be a major responsibility.
Well, we
And
don't
if the
have to
owner of the
approve it if
land...
it's major. Right now, it only says it may be significant, which doesn't mean it is significant.
That's true.
So I say we
We don't have
go,
the funds either, Howard, to
we have $5,000 in the park fund right now. I mean, if we have to pay another $500 to go a little bit further, I don't think that's too much, since we've already got $10,000 invested in that park. To dump it on the firemen and make them make that decision, I think is effectively killing the whole project.
Any other discussion by the board?
The only concern I have, Dave, is if we don't have the money in there, and I don't know, I read the lease agreement the same way you do, and Howard, when you're talking about it, it is, I see it as making improvements and so forth. When you get into an environmental cleanup, my understanding is it's the responsibility of the property owner, not the person that leases the land, and that's the...
If we choose to make it their responsibility, I'm saying we shouldn't.
I don't know that, well, I don't know that we can do that. If you say that the town is going to accept the responsibility, and basically what you're saying is regardless of the cost, because my...
No, I didn't say regardless. I said-
May I finish, please? Thank you. My concern is that if we continue testing, at that point, we are committed, because I don't know what the problem is. I have the feeling that right now, ignorance is bliss. If it is not in that situation, if it is a major cleanup, once the testing is undertaken, and if it proves that it is no major problem, and can be cleaned up for $4,000 or $5,000, I would agree with you. The problem is, if it happened to be a major environmental issue, and we're into $100,000, which is a possibility, either way is possible, because I don't know. The testing was inconclusive. Consequently, I have a real major problem saying that as a town, we're going to accept that responsibility. I don't know where to go with it. I'm betwixt and between. I totally understand where you're coming from, and if it's in the area of 5,000 or less, I'd go with you, totally. But I can't do that with the way that this report reads, and that's where my dilemma is, and that's the problem I have. I say we would be forcing the town into a position of a major cleanup, and that's hypothetical. It might be nothing. I don't know. And that report was so inconclusive, I can't make an intelligent guesstimate, because I'm not versed in that issue.
Well, plus, we'll get a price to find out. If they tell us it's going to cost $100,000, then obviously we can't, neither of us
No,
can do
that's
that.
not what I'm saying, Howard. You're not hearing me. What I'm saying is, once we go with the testing, we are then, I would think, committed to go to DEC. I think that we can hedge the DEC thing right now because we don't have data that says it's a major problem. I don't think we can hedge. If we find out it's a major problem, I think we've got to go. And that's...
How are we going to find that out, Jim?
I'd say, my personal view, I don't know, Howard. I honestly don't. We don't have money in the budget to do it. We have $5,000. If it's more than that, I don't know what we
We
do.
don't know what it's going to cost, so I think we should pursue it and find out. And if it is too much to bear, then we have to build the project.
Once you know what the problem is, this is the catch-22. Once you know that there is a problem, it has to be reported to the DEC, and then you don't have any options.
Well, the DEC is going to know by now, it'll be in the paper, so...
Well, all we have is some inconclusive reports.
Right, so, in other words, you're saying, let's kill the whole project because we don't want to find out the worst, if it is there.
What I'm saying is that we could potentially, if we could budget it for next year.
We've got $5,000 in there now?
That would, Howard, the potential cleanup costs could be in the hundreds of thousands.
Could be, but we don't know that. So why are we just writing it off because of what might be? I don't understand.
I have a suggestion. May I move to table this and bring it back after we get more data? And I guess I would do that. I would move to table at this point.
You move to table resolution number 92-91.
I do.
For the balance of 1992.
Well, yes,
Let's solve it now.
that's my motion.
We cannot afford to do it this year. Do I have a second on that?
Yes.
All right. A move to table a resolution provides for no discussion. It takes precedent over any other resolutions. I would like to point out a vote of yes or aye means to table. No action will be taken. Vote no means that you want to vote on the resolution number 91. Since there is no discussion allowed, Byron, will you poll the town board?
Claudia, second.
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
No, and I'm not surprised, Dave, you've been critical of this even before you were elected, and I'm not surprised you did this.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
No.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to say a word or two, even though you won't open the floor for discussion. I've been a resident of this town for 40 years. I've never seen a meeting carried on such as you've done tonight or today. I think the people here should have an answer to what's going on the fireman's field. I've been a fireman for 35 years, and I know what's been going on. You don't. You're new in our town. You've only been here a year. You don't know the first thing about the town of Volney and how it operates. And I'm very upset, and I'm sure the people here tonight are upset that you won't give us a final answer. Mr. Rose wants to know what the problem is, if we got one. And I assure you, there is no problem except we burn a few cars up on fire training out there with gasoline and oil in them. There's no contaminants other than that. The DEC, if you want to bring them in, let them bring them in. And if you don't want that park, we let you use it for 20 years or 50 years, whatever the contract calls for. We, the firemen, will take it back if you don't want it and put a fence around it if that's what it takes. But there's no cleanup involved on our part. You signed a contract, we signed a contract in good faith that you would take care of that property at no expense to us. And if you're going to back down on it, I'm the first one that's going to go to court and say, you're wrong. And we got an attorney, and we'll fight you every inch of the way. You either find out what's the problem and take care of it, or get out of it. Give us back our land. That's all I got to say.
The problem is that we don't have in the town, nor does the volunteer fire department, have the necessary funds to do remedial cleanup. We have a bare bones budget right now. If some extensive cleanup is necessary, nobody can afford to do it.
But what if there's not? What if there's...
Let's find out. Let's find out what the problem is.
If you find out, then you are stuck. You have no choice. You are committed. And unfortunately, you are committed.
Yes, that's the law.
That is the law,
That's what
sir.
the Superfund is for.
No, the
No, sir.
Superfund only pays once all private funds are exhausted.
It would be the responsibility of the town, and at this stage, without the necessary funds, we cannot afford to do it. It is not to say that it can't be done with some funds at the next year.
All right, rather than table, Mr. Supervisor, make a resolution. One of these two gentlemen here, it seems it's a 2 against 3 no matter what we do around this town. Let them make a resolution that we turn the land back over to the fire company and drop the whole subject right now and take a loss what you put into developing the property right now, and let the people of the town of Volney go without their town park. Their kids don't need anything.
you're willing to take them over to the state or the county and let them use that county park they so-called have got going out there. Go ahead, do that. Put your money out there.
Any other new business? I will entertain a motion to elect, is that the right word? Randy Bennett as Recreation Director. Anybody know I'm doing this properly?
I would say appoint, but I move to do the same.
Okay. You want to move it then?
Yes,
Okay.
I move it.
Do I have a second?
One second. For discussion.
All right.
If there's any discussion, let's have it.
Randy is here now. I see he just came in a little while ago. Maybe if the board has any questions, they may want to ask him now.
I will certainly support this with one stipulation from all others on the board, and that is that this does not establish in any way a precedent regarding the application and applying for positions. I have no problem with Randy. I would probably be the first one to recommend him when the applications and so forth come forth. That is not my concern. As long as this does not establish precedent, I don't have a problem with it. And if we as a board can agree to that, I certainly support it 100%. I can't support it if we're saying that time limits that we establish are going to be waived any time that we feel we want to. And that's the only concern that I have on this, is that we had an advertisement in the paper, applications must be in by such and such a date. This application was not received, and that's my only concern. And if the rest of the board will so stipulate that in the minutes that it does not establish precedent, I'm 100% in favor of it, because I have nothing but accolades to give Randy, because he's doing a great job, and I'm really impressed with what he's doing with that group.
That's my only concern.
That's my only one. If they will accept that as a stipulation,
I'll go along with that. So we're not setting a precedence against applicants.
I have no problem either.
and you let the minutes so show.
Do you want the firm wording of the minutes, or can we just kind of vote? Anybody have any objection to just voting on it without?
I have no objection to that.
And get the wording in?
Yes. I would say that doesn't mean we can't be flexible under certain conditions, though. I mean, you know.
Understood, but I just want to make sure there's no precedent. I don't want years from now to go back and say, hey, we did it this time, we've got to do it this time, because that's why that stipulation's in there. No past practice.
Byron, will you poll the board?
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rhodes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
Aye.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. Any other new business? Any petitions? Under public comment, is Lisa Chetney here? She asked to speak. She is resident of Minetto and wanted to speak to us about the, help me somebody, Columbia Mills cleanup. Thank you. She asked to speak. She's not here. Any other public comment? Yes.
I was wondering about the county. You were going to meet with the county on their plans for the park. I talked to legislator Buck. I called him to see if he was coming here today. He said he had no intentions. He didn't think about it, to be honest with you. And so I questioned him before I came to the meeting on the county's plans. The county's park at the airport, I know they're planning on expanding. I asked if they had money budgeted. He said, no, not in a lump sum where it says this is for recreation, that they've had plans, for the past 10 years, and that they're planning on putting in other areas out by the Silk Road landfill for the public. And I was wondering if that would be safe, considering our with everything that's gone on there, it is a super fun site. Another question I had was this teen dance. I know Mr. Ridgway bothers you, but doesn't bows and arrows? To me that's a little more dangerous. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I'm not saying I know everything can be organized and need chaperones, but to me bows and arrows would be just as bad as dancing. I was just wondering, what did you get out from the county as far as plans go? You were going to check into that when I last talked.
Basically, the same comments that you have, that there is monies, but it is not specifically earmarked for the given project. I believe that the project is going forth. That's basically all that I can give you right at this particular time. I have been in contact with them, and that's basically the information. One other thing I would comment, that the teen dance, and if you listen carefully, I said I had reservations. I certainly wasn't saying that I couldn't support it, but I needed some things checked. You probably do realize that I've taught middle school for over 30 years, and I have dealt with high school kids and so forth, and to bring 3 or 4 or 5 school districts together needs a great deal of planning, and I talked to this with Randy, and I think that now we have a director, I think we can work this out, and I think we can establish a criteria that is acceptable to you and to me. I think that's true, depending upon insurance liabilities that Claudia is going to be looking at when the policy comes up for review.
Okay, another thing I was wondering, Mr. Buck said, and I agree, I think everybody agrees, there's never too many parks, they're always used and stuff. They cannot tell us when they're going to do anything. They've said for 10 years it's been in the plans. And he said he supports, if we as the town of Volney want basketball hoops up or whatever, all we have to do is let him know and they'll get it there. And it's like, when? We've been trying to do something, and we finally did do something, and he said Volney will have preference because it's at the airport in the town of Volney. If they want it for a day, to just let him know, and it's got to be like after soccer, of course, but let him know, and he will make sure it's like reserved for the town of Volney if they want it for a specific morning or day or a special activity, which I think is great since it is in Volney if that's what they're going to do. But what happens if the other 35 legislators want it for a day for their people in their area? I mean, there are only 7 days in a week, and how are we gonna? I mean, face it, there is no trust there because we've been promised something for 10 years that hasn't happened yet. I was just wondering how you think something like this is going to work if going in with the county.
Other than the information that you've got, you have basically the same information that I have. I believe that the park is going forth. I realize it's been a period of time. That's all I can say. I can't comment more.
Well, the facilities there, I know the buildings, the pavilion and stuff were built, I understand, by the soccer people. The county put in the restrooms, help with the watering and stuff. How would that work as far as if we wanted something, us having the right to use it if the soccer people say no or they have other plans or whatever at the time? So that's my concern. There really is no way that we can just use something like that on our own.
Now, and this is only a suggestion, I'm doing this right off the top of my head, which I should never do. I think now that we have a director and you have a time schedule and so forth, I think that now our director, very possibly the director and I can make contact with the powers that be at the county and possibly, if a schedule was needed, and sometimes we can actually discuss this and we can see what and you can see what happens. That's the only answer I can give you.
Well, I think the town board should vote to see if there is problems with the land that we have been given to us for dollars, because, where the land where the county is planning on putting a park for our people, for the county children, is on a Superfund landfill or near it, and I would think we should check and make sure there is a serious problem where that we're planning on putting one, and find out for sure rather than question when we already know there is something very dangerous where they are planning one, and that's definite, that is Superfund.
I'm sure that the DEC knows that there is contaminants in the silk mill landfill. And what are they doing about it? So what would they do with a picayune little bit of this park over on the fireman's lot? Do you think they would step in there when there's already that one over at the landfill? The silk mill? Silk Road landfill? That already polluted my land. So what do you think? I understood they didn't dare open it up because they didn't know what would happen when all these different chemicals got together. And so the DEC is backed right off. So do you think that they would step in on just a little bit of gasoline and some dirt or something?
They would definitely step in if that soil was contaminated, very definitely.
Well, why don't they do something over to the silk road landfill?
I don't know about that.
Somebody suggested to me that we do what the county does, you hire a private consultant that'll tell you that there's no hazards or nothing unsafe for the environment or the health of anybody, and get them to tell you what you want to hear. That's how they get away with it.
And when you speak, would you give your name, please? I know a lot of you, but not all of you.
Everybody knows me. I've lived here for years. My ancestors came to this country in 1560, so did my husband's.
I would just like to know, there's a lot of talk about the testing that had been done previously. Apparently, you already have some type of model that you've done some testing over there. I guess we're all confused about that. Has there been testing on the soil, and who asked for the testing, and who paid for it up to this point? Can you answer that?
Yes.
Okay.
The testing was requested by Howard Rose, and the results were submitted, and they were inconclusive.
Okay.
I'll carry that a little bit further if you like. I've got the letter right here. I did request the testing because a number of people expressed concern about possible contaminants there. And we did find out after talking to the fire department that they did burn some cars there and had some exercises there, the testing and practice and so on. And the only thing that they told us they used were fuel oils, gasoline, this type of thing to get the fires going. So that's why we thought we should test this area to see. And it's a confined area. It's just a small area in the middle of the acreage that we were concerned about. And so we contacted Environmental Products and Services out of Syracuse to conduct the testing. They gave us a price of over $600. It came in at about $500 and some dollars. And what they said, and I'll read you one of their paragraphs, according to the laboratory report, non-detectable levels of lead, mercury, and PCBs were found in the soil sample. Non-detectable. However, ethyl benzene and xylenes were detected at 2.5 mg and 28 mg, respectively. Since the contaminants reported in this sample were detected in the parts per million range, that there may be significant contamination. The New York State DEC should be notified of these findings and further sampling should commence. That's what the letter from this service gave us. It cost us about $500 and some dollars. And they did a number of samples. I believe there was about 10 samples taken from different sites around the contaminated area. So that's why I feel that this may not even be significant. And
How big an area are we talking about?
how big an area?
Yeah.
Smaller than this room. So that's where we are right now with it.
So is this area, could this be excluded from the park itself?
It's almost in the center of the park, so I wouldn't say it could be excluded, but it could be, the soil could be removed if it is contaminated, I believe, and brought back into compliance. Randy himself even offered to do the backhoe and the trucking to remove it, so that won't cost us anything. I'm sure other contractors would help out the same if we needed them, because there is an overwhelming interest in this park, and I know a lot of people would like to see it through, so I believe that we could handle it if for relatively little money, if any at all.
And could you also tell us how much money that we put into the park to date?
We put about $10,000 between the cost of the fence, the abstract surveys that had to be done, equipment that we purchased for it, the road that's been put in by the highway department, it's probably exceeded 10,000. And that's another reason I hate to see it just go down the tubes right now.
Yes.
My name is Randy Bennett. I want to thank the board for allowing me to head up this Parks and Recreation project we're going to have to get into this year. One problem I have, and with the archery, that we are proposing to start a archery group. We do not at this time have any place locally except for the park that we're working on to shoot the archery. I come out here yesterday and tried to measure off the distances what they requested. We need at least 140 feet of unimpaired vision for the kids to shoot. Plus, they have to have a sight area in behind where if an arrow goes astray, I understand they have to have a 90-degree angle back there where in case something gets veered off, nobody will get hit.
May I comment?
Yes.
The reason I'd like to comment is that I believe, I don't know if I told you, but I certainly did tell Colleen that I have a lawn space that, depending on insurance regulations, it would be adequate, and I would certainly let you use it. I have a back lawn that is the size of a regulation baseball field, and that can be used for the archery.
As long as the insurance.
As long as the insurance, as long as I am clear of legal and financial responsibility.
Where do you
Yes.
live?
Pardon?
Where do you live?
I live on Town Line Road. I have over 200 acres, 100 in Schuylkill, 100 in Volney. My lawn is 400 by 300. That's just the back part of the lawn that I put in as a regulation baseball field for kids. And you certainly...
His lawn looks like a state park.
It is. I have a adequate space. And I will certainly let that to the archery if it goes.
How would kids get their bus?
Same way they get here. Same exact way they get here. If they can get here, they can get there. It's 3 miles further.
Well, that's what we were trying to say at the meeting.
Because we love kids and we want to help the town. If this is going to be a big fight and people are going to be making snide comments, we won't do it.
No, we're trying to work this out. We're trying to build a base for something for the future. We've had people who want to run a basketball training session. We have a group of people who want to run volleyball, want to head the thing and run it themselves through our park and recreations. But they all want us to become a group, and we don't want it to fight with the town or fight with anybody else. This has got to be a marriage, because if we have over 300 children that we have cards for right now, and that's not all the ones that we used the program for last year. A lot of them came to events and weren't even signed up. And so there's a lot of children in the area, and I think that once this new structure gets into the road of compliance with insurance, when people want to do things and want to bring their time and their effort and their money and their experience, as well as their training, like Bob Scott's got his credentials. Bill Scott. And so all I can say is that right now we're just crawling. It's going to take us a while to get all these programs going. Over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've had meetings with Mr. Ridgway, very constructive meetings. We've steered away from a little bit of what we did last year to a more solid base, working out of the Volney Town Hall with some projects. And I think it's going to help the group versus hinder it. We are scheduling right now about 25 outings or projects for the next year. Now, we have lost a third of the year almost. By the time we get the okay for everything, we're probably talking 8 months left of this year. So the only thing I can add is that we really need to have the public come to our meetings, and we need to find out about the insurances for our group, as well as the people who want to bring their expertise into the group. This isn't costing the town anything to have these people come in. Their time and their money is coming in. It's free to the town. But we've got to do something to give them a place to do these activities. So within the next month, Mr. Ridgway and my group will be getting together again to come up with a complete list of activities for this year. And I would hope that the children in the town would back us like they did last year, because we had a great year last year. The kids there was times we had 130 children going on an outing. And when they came back and they were screaming and yelling and they had a good time, it was all worth it. Money is no object when you see kids come back and they had such a great time at places we went. And I think it's going to happen again this year. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Randy. I think you're
Randy has
some ideas.
Mr. Supervisor, we're on that subject with Randy. I would like to make some comments on the program myself, since I have been doing it for the last 2 years. As everyone knows, we've had an overwhelming response to the program. But just some figures here I'd like to point out to you. For Parks and Recreation, we funded $5,000 this year, and the youth program $4,555 for a total of $9,555. Now, if you look at the general tax rate for this town, and I'm talking about the general tax, not the highway or the fire, we pay $7.84 per thousand assessed value. And with an average assessment of $3,000 in this town, the average household only pays $23.52 in taxes to this town. And out of that, less than $1 goes towards recreation, less than $1 per household. And I don't think any of the families of these kids that have been participating in the activities are going to begrudge us if we increase taxes a little bit, even to cover that. If we doubled it, $2 a year, I mean, it's a ridiculously low amount of money out of our budget. The last 2 years, we've had all these events, and it cost us less than $2,500 for the summer program. Now, we did do things in the fall because we realized we had a lot more money to work with than we had thought we would. And so we were able to do things all fall, too, which included some high-ticket items, which I know Jim didn't like, but I don't think any kid went away unhappy with the Moscow Circus or the skating, the ice capades, or any of those events. And if we can afford to do it, I'd like to see it happen again. And they are educational. I've been trying to stress all along that volunteerism is the root of this whole project, and we certainly have a lot of dedicated, hardworking people, and I'd hate to discourage them from continuing with our project. We haven't had this in a long time in this town, and I'd like to see it continue. And so I think that we'd be destroying one of our assets right now if we were to effectively kill any of this for recreation, because we may not get these people back. Liability on the teen dance, I know it's always a concern, liability. We had 3 teen dances here in the last year and a half, and only one of them did we have any problems whatsoever, and there was some minor vandalism that was rectified, and that was from kids from outside the town. Unfortunately, they came here, some older kids that we just couldn't monitor because we were short-handed that night. But that doesn't mean that has to happen again. We can have a constable here, we can have more volunteers here. But the liability on the teen dance should be real minor compared to the liability of DA night here, when we get a lot of people in here that are undesirables to a great degree that could do a lot more damage to this town hall, and no one seems to be concerned about that. And as far as the highway department goes and being involved with this park, I know it's been mentioned about the maintenance on the park. Well, the only maintenance that I can see once it's constructed, which again, we're hoping to do with volunteers, as Randy has pointed out and I've pointed out, so the expense to the town is going to be minimal. The highway department already mows the cemeteries, they cut the grass on the sides of the road. I don't think this would be a big chunk out of their time to have to mow the lawn at the park once every couple of weeks or so. So that shouldn't be a problem. But once again, we got to provide a facility. That's the only way this program is going to expand. In the past, we did talk to some other people about Archie. It might have been people from your group, I'm not sure, because Robin Cooper was dealing with it. But we were counting on seeing something like that happen this year. Unfortunately, Robin left us last year, so he didn't work on that anymore. But like Randy said, we've had people who want to run a volleyball program from the Fulton Volleyball Association out here for the kids and the adults. We've had the Junior Baseball League in contact with us in the past, wanting to set up leagues out here. We've had junior or knee-high basketball that has wanted to get involved out here in the summer program. So there's a lot of opportunities that are available to us if we pursue them. And I submit once again, political will is the only thing in the way of seeing this project through. And I'm just going to ask the board to please consider it and do what's best for the town. One other question on the agenda. Could someone explain to me again the policy for getting on the agenda? I remember something about that we had to have something submitted on Tuesday, but I thought there was some flexibility there. And the reason I'm asking this is because Randy did ask Jim Ridgway at our meeting a few weeks ago about being on the agenda, and I remember you telling him, Jim, that you wanted to see a copy of what he was going to have on the agenda first so you could review it beforehand. I don't know why that's necessary. I think someone should just be able to get on the agenda without having to see what they have.
As an individual, certainly, and I thought we were talking as a recreation town board liaison. I, being the liaison, needed to know those particular things and felt that it certainly was within the confines that I would have there and within the parameters of the liaison's responsibility. As an individual, I believe the process is prior to Tuesday, simply call the clerk to get on the agenda. Is that correct, Brian, or am I wrong?
I believe it was worker.
Or supervisor.
Dave, actually, he put it together and I typed it, that's all.
Well, I know Randy was a day late again, but he has refused to be on the agenda, and I think we should be flexible in that, especially since he did ask you 3 weeks ago, and we've been talking about it all along, and, you know.
All printed 2 days before he called.
I don't see why it has to be printed. We can pencil it in the day of if we have to.
That's up to somebody else to pencil it in.
The intent certainly was not to not allow Randy to speak, and if Randy came, and I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe Byron probably said that he could do it during public comment. Is that correct, Byron?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and so public comment, and Randy was given the floor, and we certainly would not exclude anyone from speaking. That wasn't the intent, obviously.
So our policy is we have to have it in by Tuesday, 2 days before the meeting, or if it's not, if it's a Saturday meeting, it has to be in by Thursday, and then the request to be on the agenda has to be 2 days prior to the meeting?
No fixed rules. No fixed rules.
Anybody can stand up during the,
He couldn't be here originally for public comment, that's why I wanted to be on the agenda. He made arrangements this morning so he could be here towards the end of the meeting, only because he knew he couldn't speak earlier. But, you know, I don't think he should have to do that, because I don't see any reason why we should exclude anybody from the agenda. I mean, procedures are one thing, but I think we should be flexible in some of these things.
Certainly.
yes.
Hi, my name's Colleen Scott. This is my husband, Bill Scott, over here. We wanted to start a JOAD club in the town of Volney. JOAD stands for Junior Olympic Archery Development. I don't know if you have seen articles in the paper about our daughter, Jamie. She's really involved. She won silver medals at the Empire State Games for 2 years in a row. She's competed nationally for the last 3 years, and this is just something that my husband and I wanted to do for a long time. JOAD is, it's nice. There's little achievement badges that they get as they shoot better and better. We can get grants from the National Archery Association for equipment, targets, for travel, for whatever. They've already handed out the grants for 1992, but I'm going to check into the deadline for 1993. So we wouldn't necessarily have to get all the money for JOAD from the town of Volney. We could get some from the National Archery Association if our grant is approved. Also, what Jim was talking about, they have a new program now where they loan a kit to new JOAD clubs, and it's for a period of 6 months. It's 12 bows, it's arrows, arm guards, finger tabs, everything you can imagine you'd need. Not targets, though. That's the only thing. I called Mr. Brown, who lives in California, yesterday and talked with him about it. The only thing that he said was that they would want my husband to attend one more training class before they would loan us this kit, because this is from Easton, who is a manufacturer of arrows. Another thing is kids, if they get real well with their shooting, they can be asked to join the junior elite team, and they can compete internationally for the United States. There's also the United States archery team when they get older. There's the Empire State Games. And archery is a lifetime sport. The national champion in the women's was 18, and the national champion for the men is over 50. So it's something that you can learn when you're little and you can do for the rest of your life. it's just something that Bill and I wanted to do, and we thought that it would be nice for the recreation program so that the kids were learning something as well as having fun and going on field trips, but this way they'd be learning something that they could enjoy for the rest of their lives. So I guess that's all I have to say. If anybody has any more specific questions, they can ask me after the meeting.
Thank you very much, Colleen. It sounds like a good program. Any other public comment? Yes.
My name is Donna Kessner. You said that, Mr. McFarland, you said that Mr. Ridgway had correspondence from children for the recreation program. Could I ask you to read that?
I feel very strange because I've left one of the other bag in which I've got all my other books, and that's what I was hunting for. I left it sitting next to my aquarium, and that's where it is right now, and I apologize for that. I'm sorry. It was an error. It's in my bag, and as you can see, I carry an abundance of stuff, and I just ran out in the snow, and I forgot it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Very nice letters.
I just like to, I think it's a very good idea. They want to start an archery program at Volney. I think that's a great idea. Anything they're going to do for the kids, I think that we're all in favor of it. Nobody's objecting to that. I think the only concern is, as you've heard from all of us, is that we feel that there needs to be a place. There was a recreation program when Jim was involved a few years ago, and he knows himself the problems that we had using the town hall here during the summer with the highway trucks coming in and out. It's a very hazardous place to be having children hanging around the town hall. And to have a park or some type of place or facility for the archery or whatever you're going to start, it's obvious that we need it. And as far as money being projected for the county park, I've talked to a couple legislators in Fulton, and they have told me at this time there is no money budgeted for a park. There is, and they are not even considering going into the business of youth programs. That's one of the reasons they got out of the nursing home, because they just wanted to get away from the nursing home and the youth programs. So I think that what we need to have done here is invite Legislator Buck to come here and give us a full-scale report on what is exactly budgeted for the park, if there is or if there's not, and let's clear up this controversy about a county park once and for all. And if there's not, I think that we should proceed with a town park, if not with the fire department, which I think is ridiculous, seeing that they've already donated the land to us at no cost. I can't see just if there is some contaminants, fine. Let's get to it. Let's find out what it is. And as far as the DEC, if they have to be brought in, there's no cost for them to come in. Let them come in. And then I can't believe there's going to be this escalated cost for cleanup. And if you choose not to do this, if you're not going to develop the park this year, then maybe you ought to take Mr. Hawksley's suggestion, give it back to the fire department, and let the town consider doing it on their own as a committee, maybe not even involving the town. Let it just be a citizens group with the fire department.
Thank you for your comments. Bill Buck is here for the next meeting. Yes.
Christine Rose, and I'd also like to say something about the park, and that is, if we know there's a problem there, I think the town board has to notify the DEC and have them come in. I mean, it's like, you think you're sick, but you're afraid to go to the doctors because he's going to tell you there's something wrong with you. I think that it is the obligation of the board to contact the DEC. And I don't have a whole lot of faith in the DEC personally, but I do think that if there's a problem out there, it should be looked at, and it could be very minor. It could be something that could be taken care of, and I agree that somebody somewhere doesn't want the kids in this town to have a park, but I don't think it's because of the kids personally. I think it is political.
Boy, is Volney the last one to have something for the children. More children in Volney than any other of the towns. I didn't know a doctor made the comment that all the children were in the town of Volney, but that's where they were. The other towns didn't have them like Volney. So,
I have one last quick comment. Also concerning the recreation, I guess the Recreation Committee was told that they can't use the copier, that's only for town use, which I understand. But I'd like to ask why it is on Monday. Is that what was told, Randy? Did they understand that?
Robin told me that we weren't allowed to use it last year. We were not
He
allowed
can
to
use it anytime he wanted to.
Well, he did. He's not the Recreation Committee, he's the Recreation Director that was hired by the town.
It never came out of the office in there.
Okay, well, I just want to understand the policy on that, because I know on Monday nights during the court night, that all these attorneys are in here using that copier to the hilt for their own personal use, and if we're going to eliminate other people, especially our rec committee, from using it, I think that the attorney should be addressed also.
It certainly never came out of my office, I'll assure you that.
No one's pointing any fingers, we just want to know the policy on it, so in the future that we know where...
Nobody's been denied access to that guy that came in the front door and asked.
I don't know why you're saying that, Howard.
I went in and turned on the copier and they used it.
Right, well,
Fine, no problem.
you were there and did it though, but before that, we were told that we couldn't, and that's what came down last year. Well, Randy said Robin told him last year.
the meeting we had in there.
Well, Robin tells you what to do then?
Robin was there, he told them.
He told me. I wasn't. No, it's a fault, just misunderstanding, that's all.
I'm just asking what the policy is, if they can use it or if they can't, and if they can't, where do we draw the line on who does use it, who doesn't? I mean,
I don't think people can come in off the street and use it, but I don't think anybody on town business.
well, we have a policy of 25 cents a copy, I believe, but I would assume that's limited to, someone coming off the street and not citizens of the town who are working in conjunction with the town to, proceed with the project.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to have an understanding on that. Also, I warned Jim about donating your private property for use for rec program, because next thing you know, they want Jim to swim in your pool. So you might want to be careful.
I'm not offering anything there, but it depends on what the liability would be sometimes. We had a lot of people
Real quick.
Any other public comment? Thanks very much for attending on this snowy day. And I'd like to mention that we will be auditing bills April 7 at 7 p.m. The regular board meeting will be the Thursday, April 9 at 7 p.m. And then there will be a public disclosure meeting on data collection and revaluation on April 16, also at 7 p.m. I will entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved. Do I hear a second? Second. Byron, will you...
Councilman Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilman Rose.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smart.
Aye.
Councilman Warner.
Aye.
Supervisor McFarland.
Aye. We stand adjourned.
Can I ask you a question for one there? Do you like the Saturday morning meetings once in a while? I do, but I don't know if anyone else does. No? Okay.
I got 300 kids, I used to wait for right now.
Oh, okay, 'cause I just...
No, there's a tournament.